Right. So, power audit.
Yeah, so our boat was never really used as a liveaboard before we bought it. It was just a holiday boat, a weekend boat. So the electrics on board were just set up for that purpose.
It's not really prepared for long usage outside the marina.
We thought we'd talk through the electrics on board as of when we got the boat and just kind of highlight the problems that gave us, and talk through some of the resolutions we found. And the other reason for doing it is so we needed to put a solution in place, and to know what kind of solution to put in place, so we needed to know how much electricity we were using.
We're going to skip the starter circuit, which in our boat is the starter motor and the bow thruster. Although we are going to cover the navigation lights and a few other things that are related to, that are coming off our domestic circuit. We're just going to leave the starter circuit out.
On board, when we bought the boat, we had 4 lead acid batteries of 110 amp hours each.
Yeah, so that was our whole DC source.
The reality was they were
very dead.
Well, we did some research through all the paperwork that was left on their boat, and we found out they were bought in 2012, so 5 years old. Probably not looked after that well because, like we said, it was a weekend holiday boat, so they're probably left idle for 6 months of the year.
And it had been in a marina for, we believe, up to about 9 months before we bought it, just sitting there with nothing charging it. So the batteries had discharged. And we didn't really have any way of kind of testing any of this. All we had was a little idiot gauge, like my dad used to call them, where you could just sort of see what voltage was currently on something. The domestics were showing at like 14.4 volts, which sounded good after you had been running the engine for a couple of hours. Half an hour later, it still shows 14.4 volts. But in the morning, it shows like 8.6. And that means they're dead. Basically, we had to do this power audit. We wanted to start from kind of a knowledge of what our existing things were, so we sort of enumerated everything. So there's the Inlander fridge, which has a 12-volt conversion to a Danfoss compressor.
We had 6 overhead lights.
One of which was a sealed light over the shower.
4 downlighters, which were halogen, and 6 other downlighters of a different style, which were also halogen.
We had our tunnel lamp. It was a very large incandescent bulb, so it would have been a lot of draw.
We had a horn at the front of the boat, obviously.
We have the 3 nav lights on the boat. They're on very rarely, but they are incandescent bulbs.
We've just got the spark ignition for the gas cooker.
The shower pump, which is only run when we actually are emptying the shower. The vanity pump. The water pump, which runs fairly loudly, but relatively rarely when we've used water and we drop pressure to a certain point. And then there's the combination macerator and pump that are part of the pump out toilet.
So we've got the depth gauge on the pump out as well, which is supposed to tell us how much capacity is left in the tank. And it was a waste of time because it never got it right anyway.
It was totally wrong. We have a water depth gauge up at the front
to tell us how much water's in our freshwater tank.
We've got an LPG or propane gas alarm that's like a sniffer that checks whether or not there's any gas leaking into the boat.
We've got a radio, like a car radio, that we rarely, if ever, have used it.
We are wired for 12-volt sockets, so we actually have 3 little sockets that use this old style 3-pin connector.
We've got the bilge cup,
which runs extremely rarely except for when it's really necessary.
And then the last thing is the Eberspacher, which gives us hot water to our radiators and hot water to wash with.
Yeah, and it is a significant enough draw that it was enough on its own to kill those batteries within about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's the DC loads, and that came with the boat, that were here when we arrived. And we have an AC supply. So we've got a 3 kilowatt Stirling inverter, a little bit older model. It obviously is also a load on the DC side, but it gives us AC electricity on a ring of four sockets in the boat. And we can also switch over to a shoreline supply We're not really taking that into too much account because we're not intending to be on shoreline very often.
No,
but
I think it will happen occasionally, but we're not looking to be in a marina for any length of time. So.
Yeah, and there's 2 items that run just on it. If you're on shoreline, there's a battery charger, and there's a small immersion coil that would give us warm water off of the shoreline as well. Those are both disabled when the boat is on battery mode, so when it's running off the inverter, you can't actually use either of those 2. The switch doesn't even work.
So, immediate problems with this whole system that we inherited when we got the boat.
The batteries were dead. So that's a pretty big one.
I mean, they got us down the Thames, down the Way, down the Basingstoke, but that's because we were running the engine every day, mainly because we were moving every day, but if we didn't move, we'd be running the engine. Yeah, we were not really switching on lights very often, and...
No, we weren't turning on our internet, so we were basically just paying for that without actually being able to use it.
We were getting hot water from because we were running the engine, that also heats the water, so we didn't need to run the Eberspacher. So we're basically limping along on these dead batteries.
Yeah, and every morning we'd have the LPG alarm going off because the power had gotten sufficiently low that it couldn't remain powered. So it's pretty bad.
So already mentioned the horn was dead, it was full of spiders, that wasn't working.
The lights themselves, all of the lights, were drawing too much power.
Quite a daunting problem was that the wiring itself, was just a complete mess. Yeah, Michael likes to call it spaghetti. So you'd look at the batteries and there'd just be hundreds of wires snaking all over the place, not labelled, so you wouldn't know.
And they're all the same color. So it's like looking at a bowl of spaghetti and going well, I think I can tease this out and figure out what goes where.
And there's a panel in the bathroom as well where all the 12 volts isolating things are.
Yeah, and there's totally non-standard colors. There's black and red in some places. They're using ground cables for
some of it's positive. Held together with insulation tape.
Yeah, just literally wrapped around a battery bolt. It was
daunting.
It was absolutely nuts.
So to charge anything, we were having to run our inverter because all of our phone chargers and computer chargers were on, and power tool chargers.
We're all AC supply required.
Yeah, so even if we wanted to charge one phone, which has a relatively small draw, we were having to switch on the 3 kilowatt inverter, which has a draw in itself.
Yeah, so we're hitting two draws to get what is actually a really small amount of actual voltage out. It's just incredibly inefficient.
Yeah, crazy.
We did have a problem. Again, it's an older inverter. When the engine revs too high, we got sort of a voltage spike down the line. It destroyed a MacBook Pro charger.
Luckily, just the charger, not the computer.
So these AC, whatever was going on there, possibly has to do with the fact that our inverter doesn't seem to have been grounded properly. There's a bunch of different potential issues there.
Another really frustrating problem is we knew the batteries were shot, but because we just had this idiot gauge which showed the voltage, we never knew how much charge was in them.
You had no idea how many amps were being drawn.
Yeah, so we never knew when they were down to 50%, because that's when you're supposed to start charging them anyway. We never knew when we were charging them, when they were full. We were just kind of running blind on the batteries. We
had noticed, because one of the things that I thought about doing fairly quickly was switching any of our items that were potentially able to run straight off of 12 volt DC to run straight off 12 volt DC, and discovered pretty quickly that we don't have 12 volt DC. We have anywhere from 10 to 16 volt DC, depending on what the engine's doing. So our 12 volt sockets were not in any way stabilized. Now, that'd be fine for something that's designed to run off of an automotive supply, but we wouldn't be able to wire in our modem, because that's got to have a very sort of straight, even, and regulated supply. The basic other problem was that the pump-out toilet itself, when the macerator ran, was sufficiently high of a draw that we'd get flickering of all of the lights in the boat, and all of the other electrics would sort of die. So basically the macerator was just drawing too much amperage.
For a really short period of time, but during that time it would be too much.
Way too much amps.
When we got the boat, it had a vacuum cleaner, so we thought great, but every time we plugged it in, it would just die because the inverter couldn't provide enough.
Turns out the vacuum's doing something called air watts, and that doesn't seem to translate into anything. So it was just sucking all the power.
So there all are just a few of our problems.
Ongoing issues that we were having with the boat as it was set up, and the few things that we brought on board.
Yeah.
You know.
So we had some really quick, easy fixes. The first one was to switch out the lights to LEDs because obviously a much lower power draw. Michael replaced the horn, so now we have a working horn, which is important for communication.
Navigation. I also replaced the tunnel light with a LED unit that we got also off of Amazon.
We bought a surge protector, so just like a power lead with four gang kind of extension cable, but it's also a surge protector, so that should solve the problem of spikes in electricity. Michael also wired a cigarette lighter connection thing
up to our 12 volt, a bastardized AC connection.
So we can now charge anything with the USB connection.
And that's designed for automotive power, so it doesn't care about the large fluctuations in voltage.
The last thing we did is we just threw away the vacuum. So
vacuum gone.
Now we just live in
a filthy, filthy, filthy mess. There were some incidental fixes that just came from other choices we made. The whole problem with the macerator and the gauge on the pump out were just taken out when we replaced the pump out with the airhead thing.
So we will do. Like, we've had the toilet for probably 6 weeks, 2 months, and
we're learning.
We're still learning, so we don't feel like we're ready to do the toilet review.
We can't review or report. We can complain, but a lot of that complaint comes down to user error, and user error, let's just say that
there's been incidents.
There's incidents.
We always wanted to get solar, that was always part of the plan, but now we had to replace the batteries as well. So before we could do either of these things, we needed to know what our actual requirements were. So we did a power audit to measure
what we could measure.
Yeah, some cases measure, some cases estimate what our actual draw was.
I do have a multimeter and I can measure current, but we found fairly quickly that almost everything couldn't be accessed so that I could measure the current, like, realistically, because of the spaghetti wiring. For most items, we ended up having to
just look at the manufacturer's details.
Yeah, and extrapolate from there. And in a couple of cases, just outright guess because there were no details. So we have a MacBook Pro charger. It's a 61 watt USB-C charger. We actually did measure that using an AC circuit tester, and we were actually drawing in normal usage about 80 watt hours a day. We've got my Lenovo ThinkPad laptop. It's a different setup than the MacBook Pro. It's got 2 batteries, so it's got like a lot more battery capacity, so it takes quite a bit longer to charge, but it's a smaller 41 watt adapter. Based on theory, it should draw with 3 charges a day 220 watts. Based on actually checking it with the AC meter, it was 128 watt hours a day. We have our USB chargers. We have various of these, and so we sort of just had to total them up and go by what we looked at from the manufacturers. That said, based on what we thought our usage would be, we'd be at about 108 watt hours. When we actually got around to measuring these, when they're drawing off AC, we got this way wrong. It turns out they were pulling 216 watt hours for the same amount of hours of usage and everything. We have a LTE modem for 4G. That is a 12 volt unit, and it's supposed to draw just 1 amp. So in theory, it draws 180 watt hours a day based on sort of 18 hours of usage. In reality, on measurement, it's actually about a third that is actually coming out. So it was really 60 watt hours. So that was overestimated by theory. Then we have our AC chargers, which we more or less had to just say, okay, this is how many chargers we've got. We kind of averaged how big they were and took a guess, and that estimate came out to about 72 watt hours a day. The rest of the items were the ones that aren't AC, so they weren't able to be tested directly. So we just took off the manufacturer. So that was our Danfoss fridge. What I could find, because there really wasn't much information, said that if this thing was running 24 hours a day with the sort of half on, half off that we expected, it would be about 288 watt hours of 12 volt draw. The fan that we put in for the composting toilet It runs 24 hours a day, but draws very, very little. So we very, very generously estimated it at 24 watt hours. The odds are it's a fraction of that. The LEDs, we went based on sort of what we expect to be our winter usage, with like lots of bulbs burning for 8 hours a day. Once you've swapped out to LEDs, you actually have a very, very low draw. So we estimated about 9 watt hours total for all of the LEDs. The water gauge, I couldn't find any information whatsoever, so I just took a rough guess of half a watt and extrapolated from there. It runs 24 hours, so it's going to be about 12 watt hours a day. Right, so the water pumps, there's 3 of them. We actually had pretty good details of what each one draws, but the problem with the water pumps is they draw for such a very short amount of time.
And we don't know how many times they go off a day. It depends how much water we use.
So we just had to kind of guess at a reasonable average and extrapolate that out to a very small number of hours a day, and we kind of came up with 1.5 watt hours a day of generously used water. And then the last thing is the Eberspacher. Sort of, I think, reasonable estimate. Comes out to 50 watt hours on average. So basically, if we take all of that and roll it up together, we end up with a approximate and fairly generous 1200 watt hours a day, or 100 amp hours at 12 volts, which was pretty much what we'd kind of guessed. With measurements taken into account, but only being able to measure a fairly small number of devices, we came up with about 960 watt hours, or about 80 amp hours of DC draw a day. That seems a little lowish, but not so low as to be unreasonable considering how we use power and everything. And we use those calculations through, our solar vendor. They've got Bimble Solar. They've got a calculator that allows you to kind of figure out what you need in terms of solar panels.
So that
we used it to figure out what battery needs we had.
Yeah. So in the next video, we've already done our lithium battery video, so if you haven't seen that, we'll link it below and you can see what batteries we chose. But the next video will be about, not really sure, but we'll also talk about the solar panels that we chose and the capacity that we chose. And also we decided to get a battery monitor so we can actually now see what our actual draw is. So that's quite interesting as well. Yeah,
and it does change some of these details a little bit, because once we were actually able to see what the amperage draw was on every one of the items, it elucidated that the reality of your battery audit is not necessarily the reality of what's going on.
No, no matter how diligent you think you're being.
Yeah, we're trying to be totally diligent. We're going off of everything, and it's like, oh wait, this thing that says from the manufacturer that its maximum draw is this. No, it can go way above that.
We'll also talk about how we try to solve the other issues, so the unstable 12 volt and the too big inverter, and just other issues that we had with the wiring and stuff.
Yeah, and we'll show you some pretty pictures of gauges in operation and stuff.
So we hope this was useful.
Like and subscribe, and
not very good at this.
Bloopers to follow. Dog update. So George is doing really well. George has adapted extremely well to the boat. We have finally gotten him to the point of him being trusted off lead.
We can walk him off lead. He doesn't jump off the boat.
He does jump in the canal, but not off the boat.
He doesn't jump off the boat unless we tell him to. Most of the time. We've still got a few training issues. We really need to work on his walking to heel, and I mean his recall's pretty good, but
not perfect. But for the most part, he's pretty good. He's a little grabby with the toys,
and he doesn't like giving his ball up.
No, he doesn't like giving. Oh, although he likes giving it up. He knows he's going to get thrown.
He's going to get thrown.
Sorry, he knows.
We don't throw the dog.
I've only once thrown the dog. He's great at catch. He's absolutely great at catch, and he'll give the ball up immediately if he thinks you're going to throw the ball to him. If he has even the slightest hint that you're going to hide it or take it or, wash the 1.5 inch slick slobber off of it, it's not going anywhere. It's staying in his mouth.
But we love him.
Yeah, we do. He's gorgeous. He is absolutely a wonderful dog.
The funniest thing is when you're walking him and he like runs into the reeds, like because there's like a metre worth of reeds before you get to the canal, and he'll come out and he'll be covered in reeds and brambles and bushes and
water lilies.
Water.
Yeah. All right. So that's your George update. He's a very good dog. He's a very, very, very naughty dog.
And
not in a bad way.
And he enjoyed the boat tuber barbecue. He got on well with Ruby and Molly.
Yeah.
Didn't like Ruby stealing his ball.
No, didn't like Ruby stealing his ball. Did like Ruby, just didn't like having his ball taken. Yeah.
And he no longer thinks we're going to give him away. That's the other thing he'd do. Like because we've got the car at the moment, so we'd go to like Pets at Home, or we'd go to Screwfix or B&Q, and he wouldn't get out of the boot. Like,
no, he'd just sit in there and shiver. Like he was terrified of getting out of the car.
So one of us would be like stuck in the boot while the other one went shopping.
He's been introduced to little children for the first time, and that has been great. He's had absolutely no problems.
The little children didn't know that we were testing him on that.
No, yeah, they were sacrificial.
When they came running up, can I pet your dog?
Yeah, sure. Can I throw a ball to your dog? Yeah, okay. Oh look,
please George, don't
the child is alive. Excellent. Yeah,
right.
Sacrificial children. All
Thanks for watching.
Enjoy.
You see my eyes? I didn't get to sleep till 1 o'clock last night.
Where's
Is that in your hand?
Oh.
I'm gonna twiddle it.
Apparently she's putting on mascara. Mascara. George, what do you think about this problem? Sorry, there's nothing that I could find on their website because it's in German or Norwegian. It's in some other language. There's 3 of those. 2 of them currently normally power the gas cooker. They normally power the gas alarm, the LPG alarm, and the water depth measurement, the water depth sensor.
The water tank gauge measurer.
The water gauge measuring depth sensory thingamajig.
No. And George, back on the boat.
Come on, George. George has gone off the farm.
Not allowed.
There we go.
And we are, I don't know.
Trying to raise funds for a battery-powered vacuum.
There's some that are like 30, 40 pounds.
And suck.
No.
Badly. What the hell? That's quite a color scheme. See, I was talking about doing dazzle camouflage. That's nice.
That's a great paint job.
Yeah. Oh, look, and the Angel of Death. That's a
I've seen pictures of that
personality. What was I talking about?
What was I talking about? Michael wouldn't let me wear my sunglasses, and no one's.
Well, now you can wear your sunglasses. All right, sun's come out.
That's terrible. Look.
I know, but it's just because the sun's behind the tree now. I think we're gonna have to change angles.
He wanted. Oh, my bum's getting wet.
See, that's why I'm talking about the towel.
Oh, look at the conkers.
Oh yes, preparing to attack our boat. Conkers.
Michael's never seen a conker before.
I'd never heard one before yesterday. Just sitting in the boat, and all of a sudden, bang! Holy crap! What was that? So, the total of all of these, based on guesses and everything, is missing from this page. So I don't know what they come to.